Good morning, everybody. Good to see you. Um, for those of you who don't know, when I was in college, which seems like a million years ago, God, if I could do it all over, you know what I mean? If I could go back to college and have gone through a lot of the healing journey that I have, because I was, in high school and college, I was so distracted by all, growing up in an alcoholic household and just being in survival mode and not knowing why, and just all of the chaos that was filling my brain and my heart that didn't give me the opportunity to really sink into what if I had the opportunity now to do it, what I might have done, you know what I mean? But youth is for the young, right? For whatever. Anyway, maybe I'll go back to school someday. Who knows? But when I was in school, I was a psychology major in college, and it was psychology that allowed me to really sink in and be like, whoa. And I think so many people who majored in psychology did it as a way, or were interested in psychology, have done it in a way as a means of self-understanding, right? Like learning about these theories, learning about all of these insights into human nature that some of these brilliant minds brought into existence that gave us not only understanding of each other in society, but gave a great deal of self-understanding, which was very helpful to me. And then as I found my way into yoga and yogic texts and yogic teachings, I found such a beautiful parallel between psychology and yoga. And most specifically, I think Natalie would agree with me, Carl Jung, he even speaks to the degree that yoga and yogic texts in Eastern thought and philosophy played a huge role in some of his ideas in his work. Now, Abraham Maslow is the topic of conversation today, who is another psychologist, not as probably well known as Carl Jung. Carl Jung would be second to, if not maybe now even more popular than Sigmund Freud. Abraham Maslow was a popular psychologist for those who run in those circles, but definitely not as well known as either of those two. But he brought some interesting thoughts into the psychological circles back in the 40s, and then kind of expanded on those thoughts. And his thoughts parallel so wonderfully with what we know as the centers of consciousness with the chakras, right? Remember, we think about the root chakra as being, when in alignment, being associated with an experience in the psyche of safety, stability, security, belongingness, having our needs met, right? And then you move up into the second chakra, and it's associated with relationship, it's associated with creativity, it's associated with sexual energy. Moving up into the third chakra, it's associated with identity and power. And these three energy centers are considered what's called the low triangle of consciousness in yogic philosophy or yogic teachings. And the low triangle is associated with helping us manage ourselves in the material world, stay alive, stay satisfied, right? And then when we move up into the higher triangle of consciousness, this is where we start to tap into our spirituality, recognizing self as other and having a compassionate, empathetic connection to others by way of the heart chakra, truth and communication, intuition, and connection to divine source energy in this high triangle. And so I'm going to read to you a little bit about Maslow's hierarchy of needs with the theory of human motivation, and give you an understanding of, so much of what has built our society around thought, especially in the psychological and probably anthropological realm, really isn't so far off from what the yogis were teaching. It's just a little bit more catered toward Western mindset. So let me read a little bit from this paper that I printed out. Abraham's theory was that there are basic needs that every person is inherently motivated to fulfill in their lifetime. When the needs on one level are met, that person seeks to fulfill the needs on the next level, and so on. It's an evolutionary process of consciousness through getting needs met. The needs he identified were psychological, related to safety, social, and then that related to esteem, and then ultimately self-actualization. Decades later, he revealed that his theory had added, beyond self-actualization, self-transcendence, which is something that I think moves from being fully aligned as a human being in the material world to then transcending the experience of the self-identity and become one with the universe. That is enlightenment, right? That is something that we have a hard time conceptualizing, but I think based on the work that we do in yoga, it's not so far of a fetched of a concept as it used to be, right? Because we tap into little bits of it when we meditate, when we have ecstatic or transcendental experiences through meditation, through chanting, through yoga, right? So self-transcendence isn't so out of the conceptual understanding, right? It may be something that might not be possible for us, but I like to think that it is, because we're constantly reaching into these horizons of expanded awareness. So I think as we all move, maybe not this lifetime, but definitely that the work that we've done in this lifetime is going to serve to merit our experience in the next. Not withholding any type of other karma you may be hanging on to that you still have yet to live out. So, but let's not talk about that right now. All right, now let's talk about the first of the needs to fulfill. And this, in my opinion, resonates very closely with the psychology of the first chakra. Psychological and safety needs. The first level are psychological. Food, water, shelter. When these are at risk or not secure, a person is consumed by meeting those needs. Right? Think of a person who is homeless. Think of a person who is in a state of survivalistic experience, like in a war-torn environment, right? Just getting food, water, and shelter are the highest needs that they have. The idea of self-transcendence is so far off, right? Or self-esteem needs are so far off because they're just trying to stay alive and keep themselves out of the elements. Okay? When these psychological needs are met, people become motivated by the next level. The safety, within the safety and security needs. These are things like shelter from the weather, feeling safe. Things that threaten this level are things like natural disasters, living in war zones, family violence, and even financial instability, poverty. Generally, we meet these needs through a warm and secure home, a steady income, and living in a safe area. Not a lot of people find that. Right, but what's interesting, he says, generally we meet these, right? You hear about people living all over the world in what we would consider, devastating poverty, and they're happy and they're peaceful and they feel quite fulfilled. So generally speaking, right, he's speaking to this, and probably very much more so the Western mindset. Then we move into that second area, social needs. Once safety needs are met related to the first chakra, we can move up to the social needs, which would correspond with the second chakra. The needs for love, belonging, affection, connection. This can come from the form of family, friends, community, religion, even a gang for some people. The need being met here is around companionship, acceptance, connection, right? And when we have that, we have the ability to move into a more creative space. We have the ability to open ourselves up to sexual experience with other people. Then we move up. Once that need is met, we can move up to esteem. The next level is esteem, and I believe this is very closely related to the third chakra. This is where we seek out things that increase our sense of esteem, like accomplishments and social recognition. However, to move past this level, we have to develop a solid sense of our own self-esteem, not to rely on others for it, right? And think about what's going on so much right now in our modern world. Getting that validation through social media, getting that validation through one's own appearance, or, who knows what, right? So it needs to be a solid sense of esteem. A person in the lower version of esteem usually looks to others for their esteem needs, to bolster their self-esteem. And a person in the upper version of esteem develops a sense of internal validation. And that's one of the things that we are working on here in Kundalini Yoga and meditation and everything that we're doing. We're turning inward to become validated and not seeking so much of it outward of ourselves. I know I'm talking a lot, so feel free to move into Sufi circles if you're getting a little antsy. I'm almost finished here. And then that kind of resonates and accomplishes the needs of the low triangle in the material realm. And then once we resonate above that higher form of esteem, we start to move up into what's called self-actualization. And this invites us into the high triangle of consciousness. Once we've moved through that external validation to internal validation, we move to the self-actualization level. This level is about self-awareness. This is what we've been cultivating all together for so long. We strive to develop ourselves and encourage ourselves to achieve and grow and move through challenges and evolve. This is a powerful stage of life, and initially it is the level that Maslow identified as being the highest level of a person's development, until he probably transcended it himself. Let's see. Now this is where he started to add self-transcendence into his work. Self-transcendence is where a person moves past themselves as an individual and focuses on the spiritual connectedness we all share. At this level, our concerns move from ourselves to others, and we dedicate our lives to serving others in whatever way feels right to us. And here are some words that Abraham Maslow said himself that I will quote. Transcendence refers to the very highest and most inclusive or holistic levels of human consciousness, behaving and relating as ends rather than means, to oneself, to significant others, to human beings in general, to other species, to nature, and into the cosmos itself. He identified, and that was his quote, he identified that people operating at the highest level of personal development have peak experiences that are described in ways that mirror mystic experiences, spiritual awakenings, or profoundly transpersonal experiences. And now this is the interesting statistic, right? And we're tapping into this statistic, right? These people and these experiences push our human potential higher and higher. Maslow felt that because our society rewards motivation based mostly on lower esteem, love, and social needs and survivalistic, only 1% of the population would reach the two final stages of sexual self-actualization and self-transcendence, the two levels, even though every single one of us has the potential to do so. Now that 1% speaks to the fact that we are in Kali Yuga, moving out of Kali Yuga, moving out of the darkness of consciousness. And we as yogis are, endeavoring to access that 1% and change that 1% to a higher percent of the collective consciousness of those who are self-actualized and those who are transcending the self and moving into a space of collective harmony. Okay, so I wanted to just kind of tell you about that today because there's a lot of Western thinkers out there that really tap into the energy of what it is that we're working with. And I encourage you to kind of investigate some of these fathers of modern psychology, because they have a lot to offer to explain to us how to incorporate some of what yoga taught us and teaches us and bring it into the Western mind. All right, let's start with our Sufi circles and get moving this morning. We're going to clear the energy of the low chakra, the low triangle today, and move ourselves up into this availability of self-actualization and self-transcendence.